The homeless crisis in Ireland is going from bad to worse, and instead of the government upping their game and making steps to improve this horrific position that many people find themselves in, it seems to be they're backpedaling on previous promises that they had made. Couple this in with a chronic lack of rental properties that are available, and some ministers in the government, for example, being landlords of up to 18 properties. In some cases, you have a very messy setup for many people that are trying to get a roof over their head in Ireland. So I want to jump in and look at some of the figures that have been released today in terms of, well, these are the reported figures. The actual real amount of people that are homeless could be much higher than this, because being homeless doesn't necessarily mean that you're out on the street. It can simply mean that you're living in someone else's house, you're sofa surfing, you could be living in a car, anything. But the official figures that are being reported today are over 15,200 homeless just last month in Ireland, including 4,600 children. The number of people homeless and living in emergency accommodation has climbed to another record high and now stands at technically 15,286. The figures, which relate to last month, being January 2025, also show 4,603 children are homeless in Ireland at this point in time, which is a shame and a disgrace. A terrible, terrible statement to make on the Irish government that 4,500 plus children alone are homeless at this time. According to the data published by the Department of Housing, again, these are official statistics, there was an increase of 422 people accessing emergency accommodation last month compared to December 2024. So an extra 422 on top of the already growing figure. The 15,286 figure represents nearly 13% yearly increase on January 2024. So year on year, an extra 13% over the course of 12 months are either homeless or accessing emergency accommodation. The number of children homeless has risen by 14% for the same period, so roughly in line with the adult figures. The report also shows that in 2024, a total of 3,384 adults exited emergency accommodation after securing a tenancy, representing an increase of 20% on 2023. So fair enough, there are people exiting emergency accommodation, but the number of people going into emergency accommodation is still rising year on year. It also states a total of 5,509 were prevented from becoming homeless last year. What exactly that means is anybody's guess. This is a pretty grim graph when you have a look at it. This is showing the figures from January 2015 up until January 2025. So this is over a 10-year period. So as you can see, the total figures there, at the top line of that graph, we're sitting around about 4,000 in January 2015. They have risen to 15,000 plus in 10 years. That's quadruple. 4 times as many people in Ireland are homeless now than they were 10 years ago. And what does that say about the level of care and the level of concern that the government has for homelessness in Ireland? It shows they have zero to no concern, because the means are there to do something about it. If they prioritise their own people first, instead of squandering money, sending it in overseas aid and opening the doors to people coming in from other countries to grant them asylum and grant them accommodation and grant them this and grant them that, wouldn't be in this position. The blame for this, as with everything, lies solely at the feet of the government. That's a pretty depressing and stark graph when you have a look at it. The executive director of the Simon Communities of Ireland, Bear Grogan, said the figures were a glaring example of the government's lack of any prevention strategies. Yeah, and it's been going on and worsening for 10 years. This alarming rise in homelessness is a glaring indictment of our failure to implement effective prevention strategies. Well, they've only had 10 years and things have went infinitely from bad to worse. The individuals, children, families are trapped in a crisis with no end in sight. Focus Ireland has said the figures represent a significant but not unexpected setback, following the positive decline in family homelessness before Christmas. Well, after Christmas, it just goes back and comes back worse than it was 12 months ago. Chief Exec Pat Denigan emphasized the homelessness is solvable with the right policies approach. Of course it is. Money's not the issue. Money's not the issue. Securing properties is not the issue. The government can do that with iPass centres at the drop of a hat. They can clear ground. They can put modular accommodation in there. They can clear out hotels. They can repurpose buildings to take in people coming in, so-called asylum seekers and refugees. If they can do that for them by the tens and hundreds of thousands, surely they can do it for the 15,500 people that are currently experiencing homelessness in Ireland. Ireland is a wealthy country with a surplus that many nations envy, and homelessness should not be seen as something we must accept, but accept that we do. These figures are proof of that, and they're getting worse. Over the last 10 years, it got catastrophically worse. Over the last 12 months, 13% worse. So it doesn't matter if Ireland is a wealthy country. It doesn't matter that it has a surplus that many nations envy. The problem is getting worse. The problem is getting worse. So in terms of actually finding homes for people or finding rental properties, even if you're in the position you can afford to rent somewhere, before we get there, let me say that the record number of homeless people in Ireland, Minister rose back on his commitment. The Housing Minister, James Brown, said that he wanted to get the homeless figures down as quickly as possible, but he has rode back on government commitments to end homelessness by 2030. Why? Because he knows he hasn't got a hope in hell of getting the figures down to zero. They're getting worse. They've quadrupled in 10 years. They've got 13% worse, 14% worse in the last 12 months. If anything, rather than homelessness finishing by 2030, it's realistic to assume that homelessness could be maybe twice as bad as it is now in 2025, if not worse. So that's the position that the government are in, rowing back on promises. Rental homes in Ireland, period. There's outside of Dublin, there's fewer than 1,100 homes available to rent in all of Ireland. It's madness. Rents jumped by almost 6% last year. Tenants were paying €1,596 on average across the nation, according to the Daft IE report for quarter four of 2024, and 2,300 homes available to rent across Ireland. 2,300, population of millions and growing. That's the position people are in at the moment. Author of the report, the Daft IE report, economist Robin Lyons, has said we're now a decade into the rental crisis, and there's very little to suggest it will end anytime soon. Haven't been building the houses, lying about house building targets last year. Government lied and spread mis and disinformation about their government targets. How many houses they expected to be built fell well short of the mark. I think it was 40k they predicted last year. They came in at around 30. So they were well under target for that. They knew it. They knew they weren't going to hit those targets, but they persisted with their lies anyway. Guess why? Because there was an election coming up. And what do people need in Ireland? Houses. What did they think they were going to get? Houses. What did they actually get? Nothing. A complete lack of rental properties and homelessness on the increase. There's still a very tight supply of conditions, very few homes available to rent at any particular point in time. Fundamentally, that is the challenge. Whilst there is a lot of talk about changes to rent pressure zones and rent controls generally, ultimately, this is about how do we get the extra new rental supply that will be the ultimate solution to now over 10 years of supply shortages. And then it talks about Limerick recorded the highest increase year on year, 19%, followed by Leitrim at 13%. And just this week, or over the last week or so, 2,300 applications for only 46 apartments that were being offered at discounted rents at Google's Boland's Mills quarter in Dublin. 46 apartments, 2,300 applicants, which means, do the mathematics, 2,250 odd are not getting those apartments. Only 46 out of 2,300 are getting them. Insane. So where are those people going to go? Where are they going to go? Just 23% of the applicants have met eligibility criteria. The apartments were launched and are for key workers such as Gardaí, nurses, and teachers. Applicants must have a link to the local area and meet eligibility criteria around affordability, household size, and maximum income threshold. So again, if you're in with a chance of getting one of these discounted apartments, you have to jump through hoops and meet so many different eligibility criteria. And even then, if you do that, you'll still go into a lottery draw to get one of these apartments. The application process remains open until the 5th of March, and all eligible applicants will be entered into a lottery. So you might end up in a lottery for an apartment in Dublin that thousands of other people are applying for. You might end up in a garden shed or a log cabin in the back of your parents' garden if your parents have a garden, or you might simply be sofa surfing in Ireland because of a chronic lack of homes, 2,300 homes to rent for the whole island of Ireland. These are the figures. Then you have a story like this coming out today. Michael Healey-Rae, the Dáil's biggest landlord with 18 rental properties declared. 18. The independent TD has 18 properties, which is the highest among all members of the Dáil. Kerry Junior Minister Healey-Rae also says he has shares in the New York Times. Well, it's hard times for many, many people in Ireland. The cost of living crisis is really biting hard. And here we have a picture of Michael Healey-Rae with his fists clenched in the air, punching the air defiantly, because he knows he's on the pig's back when it comes to income. Never mind his government income. 18 rental properties, shares in the New York Times. Multiple TDs and ministers in the Dáil also own rental properties. His rental properties mainly consist of houses, but he also has student accommodation. He also owns a B&B guest house and a service station in Kilgarvan. He sets out a number of occupations in his return, including a postmaster, a service station owner, an operator of a plant hire shop, and an owner of rental properties. Well, you know what? We have to give this guy props. He's nothing if not a multi-talented multitasker, able to juggle a junior minister position with only 18 properties and having all them other secondary occupations bringing in the cash. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So that's the state of play as per today regarding homelessness in Ireland. If you like the content, subscribe to the channel, share the content, leave a like, do whatever you want. And if you really like what's happening here, join the channel, become a channel member here on No Risk, No Reward Media. For now, I'm Rick Munn, over and out.